What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fresh Podcast, where we bring everything fresh in entertainment. I'm your host, Drew Brumfield, and join with me again is Seth. Seth, how you doing?
Doing pretty all right.
All
Happy
right.
to be here.
Good to hear. We are glad to have you. And also returning this time is Robert.
Hello there.
Hello there. I was expecting the soundboard. I was so ready for the soundboard.
No, I wasn't gonna do that during the podcast.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Unless it's really funny. But other than that, don't. All right. But today, we are, with it being June as of time of this recording, we are looking back, and this year has been one of the best years for video games, and it's only halfway through. And with it being kind of the halfway mark of this, we wanted to look back through the years and talk about what our contenders are for the game of the year. These are all subjective. This is just our personal beliefs. And a few of them actually might be real game of the year. But I'm not even going to waste time with this intro because we got a lot to talk about with these games. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw it straight to Seth. Seth, what is the game of the year of this year?
All right. So I'm going to actually be a little bit different here, and I'm going to say so far for this year, I'm going to start off with my number 2 pick.
Okay.
And it is going to be Resident Evil 4 Remake. If you remember, whenever we talked about our kind of year in review on for last year, I also talked about how Resident Evil 4 Remake was the game I was looking forward to the most. It's a game that, like, I've gone on record on this podcast multiple times to say that, like, after playing the original, it's one of my favorite Resident Evil games, if not probably one of my favorite games of all time. And the remake does it justice. In fact, I really love the approach that they did with this remake, where it is not a one-to-one recreation of the original, nor is it trying to one-up it, but rather it is trying to be a different interpretation of that original game while still keeping the same spirit of what made it special and just updating it. It holds up not just from a visual perspective, but it holds up from a gameplay perspective as well. It is building on, I think, melding together the attitudes of Resident Evil 4 original, where it had the whole stand your ground kind of gameplay style, and also bringing in like elements of like RE2 remake, you know, the emphasis on crafting and like the UI design and like how you explore and open up areas. Yes, RE4 remake, much like the original, is more linear. You're not stuck in one spot for very long. You are constantly pushing forward, but it holds up so well in that regards. And there's also little updates to it too, where they do certain things with characters that flush them out more. I mean, I could really go on. There's all these little things that they do that makes it really good, but it doesn't replace the original. In fact, it feels like it is standing side by side with that game, and I love it for that.
So Seth, here's my first question for you about this game. What is your favorite either story or gameplay change from the original to this game? Because like you said, it's not a direct one-for-one.
I think my personal favorite thing is I love the gameplay in this, and but it weird. And I'm not usually the one that like kind of attached myself to this kind of stuff, but I really think it's the story elements. In particular, I feel like every character that they bring into remake is just more fleshed out and more interesting. Ashley is far better in the remake than she was in the original, whereas she still is in a position where the dynamic is, yes, Leon has to come in and rescue her a lot. She still gets kidnapped like every other chapter. That's still in the game. But she's also comes off as a little bit more capable and smarter about her surroundings. She doesn't come off as as whiny or something like that. And she has genuinely good chemistry with Leon to where you feel like she's kind of just a more charming and fun character to be around, other than someone else can do it. I am not going to mimic original Ashley. I just don't have it in me. So she's just way more fun. But I think the biggest improvement is Luis. I think they develop. It was one of my big asks. I remember when we were talking about on the Resident Evil 4 podcast, where it's like, I want them to develop Luis a little bit more because he felt like a character whose background is so interesting, but it needed to be developed more. And I think it was missing that. And they just absolutely nail with Luis. And if anything, and this is a spoiler. I'm sorry. I'm going to go ahead and get into a spoiler with it.
Sure.
Luis still dies here, but it feels so much more tragic here because you spend more time with Luis. You actually fight alongside with him, and he's a little bit less predatory than the original. So that's a big improvement.
You're saying he doesn't.
Oh, good round of applause.
So
I see the president lowered his daughter with ballistics, he said to the 16-year-old.
If anything, he has more sexual chemistry with Leon in the remake, which
As
I'm
it
okay
should
with. As it should be. But like, what I love about it is the tragedy about Luis's character is he is a person who is finally getting on like a path to like some sort of redemption. And it seems like him trying to cure Leon and cure Ashley is kind of his path to redemption, because he was the one who basically allowed Las Plagas to become what it is now, where it's able to infect all these villagers and everybody here and like unleashing it upon the world. And the tragic thing is he's cut down before he's able to even realize that. He basically just has to give the key to his laboratory to Leon and hope that he follows through with it.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't say I cried or anything, but I really was like oddly touched by like his death scene here. Whereas like we talked about him being pierced by Sadler's tentacle phallus in the original game, but here it's actually played tragically, and it's done really well, especially in this goofy game where just minutes ago you're riding alongside him in like a minecart shooting up red barrels. So the story was probably, I think, the best improvement here, not to mention little touches here and there. Like I really like how Ramon Salazar is a little bit less like in the original. He's kind of like a really goofy shithead, but in the remake, they take away the goofy shithead element and they make him more menacing, very unnerving character to be around. One of the parts that really got me was you can find like a note where it talked about the maids having to raise Salazar as a kid. And apparently he would play quote unquote pranks where he would get like a maid or something to come over, and then he would pour like boiling hot water on her face and laugh at her.
Jesus.
Like he was a sadistic shit before infected by the parasite. Like it's little details like that really bring this game together for me. And I think the story elements are just better here. Although I like the goofiness of the original, and the remake is still goofy, I think there's little details and stuff that just makes it just a little bit more developed, So yeah, the story was definitely it for me.
They had a lot of expectations with this, and for the most part, I think they met them. But let me talk to someone who I would imagine also would put it maybe not at the top, but pretty close up to that list. Robert, you also think of this game as Game of the Year potential. Why is that?
I think for a lot of the reasons like Steph did. I like that they made the story kind of not as goofy, but it still had like its goofy moments, but it didn't like completely take you out of it. Like the game played itself a little more straight, but not really in a way that kind of detracts from the original.
Mm-hmm.
I like how it didn't replace the original game. It kind of it adds to it in a way. You get like two different like experiences for it, but not one is really inherently better at its core than the other. I think the gameplay itself, the remake clicked with me more, just because it feels much more like a modern third-person shooter.
Yeah.
I think that pretty much all like the quality of life stuff they did like really helped. The only one I wish they didn't do was the automatic attaché, just because I like playing the mini game. But
I'm not gonna lie. I did abuse the shit out of the automatic attaché because like
I
it,
even started doing it on like my second playthrough. But like on my
fine,
first
yeah.
one, I'm like, I'm going to manually do it. I need to do that.
Robert, good on you. Good, you're a good man for sticking to your guns. Nah, don't let the corporate win.
But like, here's the thing though. Like when you press that button and like, there's really good sound design of like how you can move little things inside the attaché case, and it just sounds so nice. It's like shaking a box of Legos whenever like it all like falls into place. So I had to use that. I'm sorry, I definitely used it right away.
Fuck the sound design. Real men auto attaché case. I'm sorry, Robert. But keep.
Yeah, it's just like a very cleaned up version if you want to play the modern one.
Yeah.
And then if you want to play like the original game, then it's there. It's still just as good as it was in 2005.
Yeah. For me, like what I think is like a really big improvement, and not just because gameplay, but I think it also like adds more to the story, is the fact that your knife is now a dedicated parry move. First off, gameplay makes that a lot easier, or just a lot more fun. You actually parrying things, and your knife has durability, so you don't want to break it. But what also makes it way more fun is the Krauser fight. Is like, and it's an actual proper knife fight instead of like you kind of just swinging wildly, and it's still fun in the original. But now
Have fun.
it's still a bit more. It's a bit more personal, and I also that leads into probably a really cool like story thing is now, and kind of what Seth mentioned is, correct me if I'm wrong, but now it's Krauser that's the one that kills Louise, and that leads into the first knife fight. And for me,
and like honestly,
I was gonna say like
go ahead.
that's like a huge like gameplay change and adds more like character and personality and reason to fight Krauser, because already in the original it's clear that like him and Leon have like this deep history, and now you have even more of a reason to like blow him up with an RPG. But yeah, what were you gonna go on about?
I think I was going to add the same thing too,
Yeah.
where it does add just a little bit more to the tension of the fight, and like why Leon would be like so upset with like Krauser, because I think it really helps solidify his betrayal to Leon a lot more than the original. Because in the original, Krauser just kind of ambushes him, and then Leon's like, "Oh, I thought you were dead," or something like that. And then like that's where it kind of goes. And then Leon kind of puts it two and two together, like, "Oh, you kidnapped the president's daughter." But I think by having Krauser be the one to take Luis's life, and like just as like Leon is starting to get to know him and maybe build some sort of trust with him, I think it really makes it puts Leon in a much more believable, I think, state of like, oh yeah, this guy is bad business. He's no longer the person like I thought he was. But also, like I said, it just adds to that dramatic element of their fight. Weirdly enough, I think I prefer the first fight with Krauser, the new one, than the second fight with him. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with it, like with the traps and him having the transformation, but there's just something so fun and satisfying about that first fight where you cannot pull out a gun or anything. You are forced to use the knife.
Yeah.
I really like that first fight a lot.
Because also in the remake, that's just a cutscene. I mean, it's a cutscene with QuickTime events, but in this one, it's like, oh no, this is a fight, like where there are no QTEs in the new one. You put your hands up, put your hands on the controller.
And I like that. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's another just taking a really fun cutscene from the original and just expanding on it, just making it like more fun.
Yeah, because it's like you play like the original and do the QT, and you're just like, man, I wish I could actually like do this. Like I was more involved in this, and then the remake kind of gives you that.
And I want to add on to like the knife element too, with the parrying and stuff like that. It really encourages the player to be more aggressive and in their face with like a lot of the enemy types, like with the Ganados and stuff like that. Just because like in the original it's a little bit clunky, because like the knife most of the time was either a way to just save on ammunition by like taking out an enemy while they're on the ground and helpless. Sometimes you could swipe their face and stun them, but it didn't always work. Whereas here, with the ability to parry and still do stabs and stuff like that, and decent amount of damage, it really encourages the player to like kind of get into the horde. There's still that element of like holding your ground and standing back and all that, but it just feels so much more like natural. Like it's kind of like, it kind of reminds me a little bit of like, not one to one, but it kind of reminds me of how like Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal kind of encouraged the player to like really get up close with the enemies, because like it gave you incentives to do that. And I think it's the same thing here with this game. And granted, it's something that's from the original, admittedly. I just think it's done even better here because of the knife.
No, I agree. The knife and parry changes is probably like one of the smartest changes to from the old game to the original, in my opinion.
It kind of complements just like the enemies overall being a lot more aggressive in Remake.
Yeah.
Because like enemies in like the original one, I wouldn't call them really passive, but they definitely took their time getting to you. But like in Remake, enemies will freaking charge you. Even the Regenerator will freaking jump at you.
Like the big stretchy arms is like.
Yep.
The first time the Regenerator did that to me, scared the piss out of me. I was not ready for it. It just adds to the tension of it. I think they like, because like in the original, they just had it like where the AI would be like, when you aim at an enemy, there's sometimes they would like duck under your shot, or they would like kind of dip to the side or something along those lines. That's the way that they made the AI kind of smart in the original, and that's cool. But in the remake, I swear and it was always like the female farmer Ganadas would do this. I swear to God. Whenever you're aiming, they would always duck and run at you at the right angle to where you just couldn't get your reticule on them. Yeah. And then they would just like impale you with a pitchfork. It's like, God damn it.
I know. But I've been in that situation so many times.
But the fun part is on replays, whenever I see them doing it, because it's just happened so many times, I now know just to overcorrect my aim to where I know they're going to be at, and then just stop them like right there, which is a lot of fun. So it's so cool. Like I really do love the combat in this game. It's modernized in the right ways possible. It just feels so satisfying.
I agree. All right. So before we move on to the next one, is there anything else y'all want to talk about with the remake? This is an open question, whether it's about gameplay, story, or I'll ask it this way, because all the games that we're going to talk about are still new. What do you think is like the potential for either Resident Evil, like for this one, like they probably won't do 5 for a while, but like, do you think a chance that we'll be getting DLC for RE4 remake anytime soon?
I think we will.
Yeah.
They've all but confirmed we're getting episode 8, or I think separate ways.
Yeah, I mean, they literally have Leon like name drop it at the very end, where he's just like, I think you and me both know this is where we go our separate ways.
Wow, that.
Which is fun.
You know, that's like when like we joke, like when people say the title. It's like, yeah, my favorite line from the game was when, God, these people that live here are really evil. You almost could say they're Resident Evil, and there's 4 of them.
Yeah, it's tongue in cheek. They obviously know that. I mean, yeah, like they've already within a week, I think, of the game coming out, they put in the mercenaries mode.
It was like 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's like within 2 weeks, and they also added in like, you know, there's still 2 other characters missing there, and it happens to be Ada and Wesker. They also added in Luis as a new character into that mode, which is very fun.
He has like a really unique gimmick too.
Yeah, which is, I didn't like it at first, but once I realized that you could blow up the dynamite and not kill yourself with it, I was like, oh, this is really fun actually. So yeah, like I definitely think we'll be seeing more DLC, or rather, we'll at least see the Separate Ways DLC. So there'll be more content on the way with this game for sure, and I'll be there day one to play. Like, there's no doubt about it. Even though I didn't care for the Separate Ways DLC, there's still certain things where, like, I know people talked about like the one, I cannot remember his name because it's basically some letters and numbers. The one boss fight on that bridge didn't make an appearance here in the game.
Yeah.
I'm
okay
pretty sure that will show up in like Ada's campaign.
Look, I'm okay if they just like forget about that one, because honestly, other than like the actual chase part through it, that was probably like the most forgettable and like, at least in my opinion, like my least favorite boss from like the last one.
And that's understandable, but at the same time, I think with the remake, they could probably take something about that and make it like interesting. Like kind of getting into it a bit, like they with the Ashley section, for example. I didn't hate the Ashley section in the original too much, but I could do without it. But I feel like the version that we have in the remake is way more fun, and honestly more tense too. So I feel
absolutely more tense.
Yeah. I actually played through that part and not realized that you can actually use the lantern to stun them the whole time until like I checked out. I was like, oh, there's a challenge for completing the Ashley section without using the lantern to freeze the parasites. It's like, oh, I didn't know that. So that's fun.
Doesn't Ashley say it? Like she says it out loud. Oh, they don't like this blue light. Or something like that.
She does. Yeah. She does, but my usual pea brain just kind of ignored that. I was like, oh, because like I was like, oh, is it because like if I get near one of these torches, it'll freeze them? It's like, yes, that's partially it, but I also completely ignored the fact that Ashley is holding a blue torch, or rather lantern.
Again, Seth's greatest weakness in video games: reading.
I don't believe in tutorials. I just believe in just being my usual dumbass self and just diving right in.
That's a fun way to play. Don't let anyone stop you.
Yeah, a couple of last notes I really like. One little thing I didn't realize till it started popping up in a bunch of meme videos that people pointed out, and I know you've all heard it now, is the song during the bonus round of the shooting range, which has now become a meme of itself. It is actually the song that plays on the radio at the very beginning of Resident Evil 4, the original. I didn't know that until people pointed it out.
I remember someone said the song was originally in the remake. I just didn't know where it was from. Okay, that makes sense.
And I went back and watched the intro cutscene. It's like, oh shit, it is the song. So I think that's like a nice little touch. But the game is just so fun. And just to get into a little bit of like maybe some of its flaws is like, yes, if you had to talk with me about like which one I prefer the Resident Evil games, is like RE2 remake or RE4 remake, I would probably say RE2 remake is definitely the better made and better designed game, but RE4 remake is just so much stupid fun. Like the combat, the exploration, the story, the atmosphere of it. It just all comes together. And I really do love that game. It's a game that I'm easily going to be revisiting for years to come.
Yeah. Well, Robert, any final thoughts before we move on about the Resident Evil game?
Not a whole lot. I was just going to say, it just feels like, like with like RE4, it's definitely got more of like a sandbox kind of feel with like its combat. Like you could go in, you could pick different weapons and try different things. But like in RE2, you're kind of just using things to survive, not necessarily like, I wouldn't say go hog wild and like kill all the Ganados, but that's kind of what you do, is you just shoot everything up, kill everything. RE2, you kill as little as possible to get by. So it's like a different kind of like thing going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. More actual survival horror in RE2. Yeah. Also, like, I guess I could say this too. RE4 remake is actually kind of spooky in some parts compared to the original.
It's an actual horror game.
Yeah, it does have some spooky. It's not like the scariest one. I don't think it ever reaches the levels of like RE2 remake, and definitely not like Resident Evil 7. It doesn't reach quite those levels, but it's still pretty good.
All right.
Yeah, like the Ashley section definitely gave me a spook.
Yeah.
The Ashley section, the Verdugo part, the Verdugo part was actually about on par with the original, but I think it's just because it was that good in the original for me personally, where it's just like how unnerving he was.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've talked a lot about it. Check out RE4 remake. That one, honestly, can see that one being a potential like game of the year like contender. And the only reason I say the next one isn't is because it's not as big like marketed wise, but this one, in my opinion, definitely should win. I think Seth agrees with me on this one because it is a small. I guess not small. They're not indie developers, but is a little character action game that came out of nowhere because one day Xbox had a simple direct showcase of some of their upcoming titles like Redfall and the new Horizon game, and then suddenly they just put this trailer up for a new character action game, and it looked great. It looked smooth. It looked really fun. This rhythm-based combat, and it just came out the same day, and that game was Hi-Fi Rush, and out of nowhere, like the first time it was announced, it was also released on Game Pass. So everyone was like, oh, okay, I'll just try it. Nothing's out around this time. And it was phenomenal. It's still there. It's still great. But yeah, it was so good that honestly, I had and what I just read was the intro to a whole video that I was supposed to make about the game on why you should play it, but because of time and other things, didn't end up getting to it, but maybe when the end of the year comes around and game of the year like starts talking about more. But yes, Hi-Fi Rush is incredibly fun. It has amazing gameplay, and an amazing soundtrack with some real bands like Nine Inch Nails and some other really cool bands that actually affect gameplay. You try to hit your attacks to the beat of the music, and even if you don't hit him, he'll still swing on it. You just get bonuses for actually hitting that mark. The gameplay is great. The story is surprisingly very wholesome, very funny. I think every single character is memorable, and it's a small cast, but everyone stands out, and nobody has any more screen time than they should. Like Rekka and what's the second boss? Seth, help me out. The one that has all the JoJo poses. No, the second boss.
Well, Rekka is the second boss. The first boss is the 1 million robot.
No, it's the other way around. Because you don't fight. You don't have your parry. You don't have your parry when you fight Rekka, and you don't get parry in the next one.
No, like the 1 million boss is the first boss. That's the first one with the.
Oh, yeah. You mean the
I think he's talking about who like the people are.
Yeah, like the corporate bosses.
So the second boss, and they're not a real boss fight is it Zanzo or Zazo?
Oh no, it's the first thing you just said, Zanzo. Yeah, it's yes, that's what I'm talking about.
The one from Lion King, right? Like that's
what? You're thinking of Zazu.
God. I've already ruined this, but the JoJo boss.
Yes. I forgot what my point about him now was because we went on that tangent. But he's great. There's a lot of really fun bosses in this game, and it's a Game Pass game. So if you have an Xbox, you really should be playing this. And I do love, like, even though it was a small game and has very little marketing towards it, it still like has got a really big volume and did incredibly well for what it was. So I hope it gets more. It'll win Best Action Game. Or at least it'll be a contender, and it should win. Unless something amazing comes out the next, but...
Yeah.
Or it could be nominated for Best Fighting Game.
Jesus Christ. Well, not this year. Not this year. That's not happening. This year is the year of fighting games. Last year, there was just nothing.
Speaking of the Game Awards, those fuckheads. I really hope this game doesn't fall through the cracks because it came out so early in the year, yet it still holds up so well. And I'm afraid that because Hi-Fi Rush doesn't quite fit the mold of other typical like Game of the Year material, that it might get forgotten. And I really hope it doesn't because like let's be honest, like whenever we watch these kinds of like shows, it almost feels like it is always the same thing. That being said, though, I said that in 2021, they did do something like that with It Takes Two, winning Game of the Year. So I'm really hoping this year, not that I really give a shit about the Game Awards, but there is a part of me where I hope it's a It Takes Two situation where people recognize that like Hi-Fi Rush is doing something unique and awesome with it. And whenever you throw it to me, I'll get into why I love that game.
You can just go off now, honestly. I'll let you keep the momentum up. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I guess I'll start now.
Just go.
I love Hi-Fi Rush, and it is my number one game of the year.
Yeah,
and I find
too.
it's gonna be hard to beat it because I think it has an element to it that it's not gonna be easy to replicate. It's the game that has, in my most recent memory of playing stuff, it has the most heart of any game I've ever played. You can tell, and they've made it very clear during the direct that like all the team behind this, that this is a passion project, and it bleeds through with it so much. Everything about this game feels like it all comes together, and there is no wasted space in it. There's no like weird multiplayer shit. There's no like, oh, we got to stick in some like an extra game mode or some microtransactions or some shit or some way to like chase trends. It's not like trying to emulate like it is taking inspirations from stuff, but it's not like, oh, we need to go super cutscene heavy like a Sony exclusive or something like that. It's not like that. And it's not even trying to be like photorealistic or anything. The fact that you come out with a game that looks so polished with its animations, and it very clearly is drawing inspirations from so many different things, from elements of like visual novel style presentation like Persona, to some of the animation cutscenes doing a lot of the similar things like the Spider-Verse film did, where you are messing with the frame rates of characters and how they move. It is beautiful. The game is the most beautiful game, in my opinion, of this year. Not because, oh, is it the most photorealistic? It's not. It's because it has a unique art style that it commits to completely.
It has a very...
That's what makes it so unique.
It has a very, like, Saturday morning cartoon mixed with, like, anime style. But it's still very bright colors, and everything's unique, and all the backgrounds are always moving or popping, so everything has a nice rhythm to it. Like, and it never, the background's never distracting, and everything just kind of flows very nicely together.
Yeah, like everything is, for lack of a better word, everything about this game is in rhythm with each other. It's something I've always kind of like, what kind of my problem with like a lot of like AAA titles is they always kind of end up spreading themselves thin and trying to appeal to the broadest audience possible. So it's like, let's make sure we have a big open world. Let's make sure that we have RPG elements so it can appeal to those players. All this shit where it's just trying to appeal to every single person out there. And then this game comes out and it's like, we have a committed vision. And it's about making sure everything stays in rhythm. It is all about the music. And like every bit of it, every cutscene, every fighting move that you learn, everything is in rhythm. And it feels like it's not just a gimmick. It is the soul of this game. And that's why I love it so much. Like, and it's so sincere with it too. I hate the, actually, you know what? I don't. I am going to punch down a bit. Around the same time this game came out, Forspoken came out. And I know, like, with a lot of people, they were kind of comparing the dialogue with, like, okay, Chai, the main character of Hi-Fi Rush, says some, like, you know, what you would say, quote unquote, cringe stuff. It's like, why is it Chai getting dogpiled, but the lady, Faye?
Because Chai's funny. Because Chai's funny. I love Chai.
It's because it's sincere. Like, I think, like, with Forspoken, it's like, well, we got to be witty in our dialogue somehow. We can't let our world just exist. We have to, like, make fun of it. We have to kind of have a sort of shame. There is no shame in this game with Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush, this is going to sound a bit narcissistic. Hi-Fi Rush loves itself and loves its concepts, and it loves its characters. And it is not ashamed of any of them. And that's what makes this game so good.
Yeah.
Chai could be an idiot, but everybody plays off of him. Like, everyone bounces off each other in a way to where it doesn't take you out of it.
Yeah, it's done so nicely. And I really love the story in this too, because is it predictable? Absolutely, it is. But it hits like really. It not only does it have really good comedy, but it also hits at really good little notes of like character development and relationships. Like, yes, we know that like you kind of catch on early on that like yes, Peppermint is related to the main villain Kale, like they're brother and sister. Yeah. It's kind of you kind of get those vibes.
The two characters in this world that have a white hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, even though I'm knowing this, going into that scene where Peppermint finally kind of like her anger gets the better of her, and then she finally like kind of like lets it out, and she's like shows a vulnerable side of her, and then Chai is just like, hey, none of that matters. It's such cheesy bullshit, but it works. And it's like, damn it, it's like it's working on me. It shouldn't, but it is.
It's genuine. Like you said, it's genuine and positive, and that's such a breath of fresh air. Because everything is dark and edgy and serious and trying to be like, whatever. Like, I must fight my brother. Like, no. And the fact that like the game, I think what does it good. It has really good pacing, and it knows when to be silly and fun and fast paced, but it also knows when to hit and go slow and like be like, okay, wait a minute, let's look at this. Let's actually like have a moment. And I think that is its biggest strength, and that's why those moments hit so well. Is because if the whole game like took itself seriously and like slowed down, that moment wouldn't have felt so impactful. But the fact that like these characters have talked to each other and they seem like they have real genuine bonds towards each other. Like they make fun of each other, but you can tell like they have actual genuine chemistry. That like this it works when you get to the emotional parts.
Yeah, like oh my god, I feel so bad. Macron and the robot. I'm trying to remember his name.
Cinnamon?
I literally had
Cinnamon?
Cinnamon, that's it. Yeah, like Cinnamon. When you meet those two, like you could just tell there's like already such great like friendship and dynamic. Yeah. And the fact that like Cinnamon is just kind of he is so polite in his like insults, whether he's aware of it or not. Yeah. Like one of my favorite jokes.
Painfully honest.
It's like, Miss Peppermint, please don't confuse Chai thinking he's the brains of this operation. He's like, yeah! Wait, what?
The favorite part about Cinnamon is how they use a freaking marker to change his facial
because he can't emote. That's really fun.
That's like such a genius way to do it. It's like he just has a plain face, but he like draws on himself to match like the tone of what he's saying or reacting to. Like that's incredible.
Yeah, and it's always like these like anime kind of expressions. Yeah. Like he draws like the little weird angry mark on his head sometimes.
I love anytime he gets excited, he draws the anime eyes. Like he fills in the circle, so it's written. The eyes like really big. Funniest every time. It kills me every time for some reason.
And I love Macron because like and he's great, and then I love Macron because he's just such a good, well-meaning dude, and he's so lovable. But like every once in a while, you get like my favorite part is you're introduced. He's like, "Oh, I'm a pacifist." It's just like think about Zanzo, and he's like, Zanzo, and he just punches a wall through. My favorite joke with him is like. It's when they're in the Corsica section where they're having to ascend the tower, and he's like, "Come on, the Chai I know wouldn't give up so easily." And Chai just like, "Macron, you've known me for like 4 hours." It's like the humor is just so on point. Like when this game came out, everyone said they want to see an animated series or animated film with these characters, and I would 100% agree.
I would pay whatever subscription fee I needed to whatever platform that goes to. I do not care.
And I love like all these characters, and like and Corsica's great too.
I love it. Let me say my bit about it because I love Corsica as well. And one of my favorite.
I gotta hit this to you.
One of my favorite moments. It's not even her character, but because she has great lines too, but the one that is in my head right now is right after you beat her boss fight, and you can fuck up the QTE, and Chai will drop her, and then after that, he keeps accidentally running her into the door, like ramming her head into it, and then he tries to go through the door slow. It's like, and he goes through too slow, and he gets hit on the back end. This is stupidest fucking joke.
That was the best running gag in
It was so
in the game.
Funny, but like Korsica's actual character, first off, I love her accent, like this like Scottish thing. But no, Korsica's actual character, I can't even think of like an example of one of her lines now because all I'm thinking about is her head getting slammed in.
Oh my god!
But she is really good. She was actually like one of my favorite characters. I can't think of a quote. I keep having that image in my head.
What I will say is, I'll add this much, or what I like is that despite the very rocky way that that Korsica and Chai meet, and the boss fight and all that, I do like when she's part of the team. It's very easy to see. Very easy. I feel like with most writers, they would probably like written Korsica to be like a second Peppermint to rip into Chai, but she becomes like weirdly one of his biggest supporters. Like always, kind of like encouraging him. Like anytime you take a moment between missions to talk with her, she's very like, even though Chai's special, she's shockingly patient with him and like encouraging, and just like one of the lines is just like, you may not always be slick, but you get the job done. And it's just kind of like,
she has this like respect for him, because I think Macaron is like Chai's biggest like support person. Like he's always like, you can do it, little buddy. I love how he calls him little buddy. But Korsica is the one that's like, yeah, no, obviously you can do it. Like you beat me, so like you're clearly like that. Like she just knows, and she just has this level of respect without like having to pander. And she still like rips on him when like he does something stupid, but not like. But it's not like Peppermint, where like she's always kind of like poking jabs at him.
And it's done so good. Like oh god, we could do a whole podcast. Just
I'm amazed we never did, honestly.
Yeah,
for as much
did.
There was like something else coming out around like the time of these things, and we just like didn't for some reason. But like, gosh, we should have.
I feel like there was a lot happening around that time, though.
There was.
Like not just in not just in games. It was like films and TV too. Like there was a lot happening. So, but oh god, like the Korsica fight. I love it. I like everything about it. I like how the music starts off and it builds and builds with the tension. And to be honest, her fight is mostly just...
It's just Guitar Hero. That's all it is. It's just Guitar Hero is her fight. That's all that game.
Yeah,
it's a rhythm game.
It's a big quick time event, basically. But it's one of my favorite fights in the game because of how the music builds and like the back and forth between them, and the fact that it's also like teaching you how to parry. It's like, all right, we taught you how to parry before, but now you're gonna learn.
Yeah.
And it's
get
just
good.
like
The boss.
And it's forcing you to get good. And like I just love the way the music swells and it just builds up into it. It feels like so much is dependent on that fight, and I love that so much. It's so good. This game is just like, it's amazing.
It's so fun. There's so many moments. Like I could quote the entire script and just of like how much it is, but like I love how incredibly optimistic and bright, and just how much it stands out from everything else. It's just this weird, perfect like mix of like Devil May Cry, which I love, and like music, which is like one of like my biggest hobbies. And there are a few times where like a game will come around and it almost feels like this was like pandering to like my specific needs, and it's always weird, but this is exactly what I feel like, where it's like he literally plays like Nero from like Devil May Cry with like a few extra combos, and even some of his combos are references to him and other characters, and that's just so weird to me that other people would do a whole game about this.
His air combo, I just get Nero vibes from.
It is, bro. Of course you do, because he also has a grappling up where he whips over to him.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
yeah. He also has a robotic arm.
Yeah.
Whenever you unlock, I shared the pictures with you guys. But as soon as we unlock customization, the first things I bought in the store is like, what's the
Dude.
closest I can get him to look like Nero? And it looked shockingly close.
Looked pretty good.
Like I loved it.
Seth, you know what's the wildest part? I wasn't even trying to do that, and then when you sent me that, I looked at my own character creator. I'm like, honestly, if I put white hair on him, he would look like Nero. That's just what he would be. And then I didn't even put two and two together that I accidentally designed Nero with brown hair. Side weird tangent that I forgot to tell you guys. I met Nero's voice actor in real life. I was at Comic-Con yesterday, and yeah, I met Johnny Young Boss, who is the greatest.
No.
He is I got him to sign a thing. He's like my favorite voice actor. He does Nero. He does Gyu from Demon Slayer. He was the first Black Power Ranger back during the Mighty Morphin series.
Don't forget.
I think
He's
most
the
people,
Chad, the legend, Yunarikami.
Yep, yeah, Persona 4, right?
Yep.
He's in that. He's also I think his biggest one is still Ichigo. Well, it's either Ichigo from Bleach or Akira from Akira.
Akira, yeah.
Yeah.
And also, like, isn't he not Bash the Stampede from Trigun as well?
Yes,
Like,
yes. Yep, that's the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's Trigun.
Man, I really need to watch Trigun Stampede.
Yeah,
because
he's both. He's the original one and the new one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's one of the few people that came back. Yeah. Sorry, I got on a weird tangent because I love that man. And he's incredibly nice in person. But yeah, Hi-Fi Rush, great game. Yeah. Definitely go play it. It's on Game Pass. You have no reason, and even if it's not, it's on It's like $30 regular, and it probably like goes on sale a bunch. You probably can get it cheaper, but that's just like the base game, and it's honestly like better than most 60 plus like price games. So
only add this too.
Yeah.
It's like even if you're like not the most comfortable with playing action games, this is probably one of the most beginner friendly action games. But it doesn't feel like pandering, because even if you're like veterans at these kind of games like we are, there's still a lot of fun to be had.
Yeah.
Like there's so much you could do with the combat,
and I think
that even if you're just kind of dipping your toes in, you're going to have a good time with it.
I think part of that also is because
if you're sorry, I want to add this to Robert's point too. If you're familiar with character action games too, the game doesn't. It's nice to have the note that there's still a learning curve to it, just because of like now you have this added element of the rhythm timing.
Yeah.
Learning to get in rhythm is rough at first, but like once you do it, there's like little assists and ways to like learn and pick it up. But I'll say this much: the best way you're gonna learn is by just listening to this game's soundtrack.
Yep.
Just listen to it, like, because one, it's great, all of it, not just the licensed stuff. All of it is great.
Even I almost like wanted to play it in like the non-licensed modes, like streamer modes, because I'm like, God, their original songs are also kind of like they're kind of bopping.
It's kind of like it's like a vinyl album where you have an A side and a B side, and it's like the B side is the streamer mode, and the streamer mode kicks ass. Some of those songs, like the copyright friendly one where they had to change the lyrics and some of the sounds, they alter it to fit like certain boss fights or moments better. I swear, some of those songs are better than the licensed versions. Yeah. Like the Rekka boss fight. I love the Flaming Lips now. I like the Free Radicals song, but the version that they play, called Captive Normals, I like that way better, actually. Like, it's just, it's so good.
I don't know. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and like I have to say, like, if you feel like a little bit unsure, just play it, listen to the music. You'll eventually get the hang of it. For me, the part where this gameplay really started to click was when I found my song, weirdly. And it was the one song that I actually heard before I played this game. Well, of course, there's Lonely Boy. I've heard that everywhere, but that's like because it's in a ton of commercials. But
by the Black Keys. Them and Nine Inch Nails are probably the most popular bands in this. Yeah.
And it's funny because I'd actually never really listened to any of the I'd never really listened to 9 Inch Nails, period, and then listen to this. But anyways, I'm getting off track. The song that was the one that finally made the gameplay click with me, where like my beat timings were like 75%, 80%, even up to 90% at times, was the Invaders Must Die section. Because that was the only song I used to play that song all the time when I was a freshman in high school, like listening to it. I don't remember where. I really liked it. I listened to it a bunch, and I forgot about it for like a decade. And then coming back and playing this game, and I was like, oh, I know where the beats are in this song, and I just felt like a god. Like I was beating ass in the cafeteria. Also, another little thing. Sorry, I know, but like, did you really like the part where the big samurai chef came out from behind, and then it just like changed the song to like more of like a Japanese drum type deal,
Yeah.
and then it just, as soon as the fight goes, the announcer just goes fight, like a fighting game, and you're just like going at it, like all these little shit. It makes my brain go into overload, like I've been just injected with Adderall.
Yeah, no, I'm trying, like, my favorite, at least, song, an underrated one, I really like Wolfgang's Fifth Symphony, because also that's my favorite
was
boss
great.
fight. That's
that
a
was a
really
great
good song.
That was a good.
That's a good fight. That's probably my favorite boss fight in the game. But I think, honestly, which one's how is it? Don't really know what you think about, like, is it The Rush, I think is what that song's called?
So no, that is actually called "I Got This."
I Got This. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Rush is a different song, but I Got This. That was probably my favorite, like, original track. I love that song. That song is a bop. Don't really
That
care
song is
what
great.
you think about it.
Yeah.
It's so punk and rock, and it's just like, this game's so good. Fucking hell.
And here's another thing. And it's more like a sort of fan theory I had, but like I've listened to that song, I've listened to the lyrics. It's one of the first songs. It happens in the first level when you're just getting to know Chai. I feel like it's a song that like tells you everything you need to know about Chai at this point if you just listen to the lyrics about who this character is. The lyrics of the song literally started out at the back of the show, tired of being part of the crowd. And it's like, that's all you need to know about who Chai is as a character.
He wants to be in the spotlight. He's like, I want to be here.
I want to be a something.
Oh, it's such a good... Okay, we've been going for a very long time, but God, this game's so good. Part of me was like, screw it. The podcast is just Hi-Fi Rush now. Fuck the other game. No, not really. Because Robert probably wants to talk about Zelda.
It's definitely worth talking about.
Yeah. But yeah, before we go to that, yeah, Hi-Fi Rush. Seth, would you argue like 10 out of 10 game? Like, can I just
it
confirm
is.
it? Yeah, okay. It's a 10 out of 10.
It's a 10 out of 10.
We all think it. I'm gonna just assume you think it too, Robert.
Sure.
Okay, cool. So yeah, this game, like,
I think unfortunately we've taken Robert hostage.
Robert, we're forced. Like, our scores
I
are
like
so high,
Hi-Fi
we're
Rush.
forcing yours to be higher.
Yeah,
I liked it.
I know you.
No, I believe you do. It's just like, unfortunately, I feel like Robert, we just kind of dragged you into this.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
But yes, play Hi-Fi Rush. It really, honestly, it deserves to be Game of the Year. It should win Best Action Game. At the very least. At the very least, but it really deserves Game of the Year. Oh, it's so good. Play it. I've told a bunch of people, hey, play this game. So closing remarks this time.
My closing remarks is, there's so much to talk about with this game, so I'll just leave it at this. In order for this game to be dethroned as Game of the Year of 2023 for me,
Elden Ring 2 has to come out tomorrow.
No. I mean, this is better than Elden Ring. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. This is way better than Elden Ring. I love Elden Ring all the way, but this game is better.
Seth said Elden Ring sucks on the podcast. That's wild. Sorry. Go
yeah.
ahead. I keep interrupting you.
It sucks. It wouldn't let me romance the dragon lady. I made that up. I don't know. I couldn't come with a good joke. But in all seriousness, the metric that basically the games of this year have to beat is basically the last act of this game. And what I consider the last act of this game is after you recruit Corsica and you go to the Vandalay Museum. That section to the end is just, it feels like nonstop, like set pieces, like really good action packed parts. Boss fights, emotional scenes between characters. Like, you get so much in it. The Vandalay Museum has like such a swaggy, like jazz attitude to it. It's almost like, it feels like infiltrating a palace in Persona.
Yeah.
It has those kinds of vibes. Then you also get like the shockingly touching scene where like Chai, I'm just gonna call it the I don't need a guitar, I am a rock star scene. Like that part just like gives
that
me
scene's
chills.
amazing.
But the scene that really does it for me is pretty much all of the level that happens after that cutscene. The part where it's kicking in with the song is called "Worrying" by the Joy Formidable. I sent this song to my best friend Alex, and I said, "Listen to this," and she's like, "Oh my god, I love this song. Where did you find this?" It's like
play the video.
I played Hi-Fi Rush. She's like, "I'm playing that game," and she did. She played it and she beat it, and like it's like, is it not the coolest fucking shit? But that the scene is so, because like that level is so good. Like everything about the music comes together there. The way it starts off slow and it builds up, and like the first fight, it really kicks in with like the chorus of the song with the lyrics, and it's just blasting in your ears. And as you're progressing through the level, you're no longer having to issue commands to your companions. They are now just taking the obstacles out of the way for Chai. Like it's just happening naturally in the game, and it's just, oh my god, like that part made me tear up. And it wasn't really like a cutscene either. It was just the game happening, and they're just having all this stuff, and it's just like, it's the whole I found family trope, but it's done so well that if the part that made me realize, oh, I really like this game was the invaders must die part, the part that made me realize I love this game was that level.
Yeah.
And then the Kale boss fight, which is cool as shit. Perfect Drug by Nine Inch Nails just kicking in like that is just like the fucking like, and I want you, and then like Chai's like heartbeat, I guess, starts to kick back in, and he gets back up in the fight. I'm like, fuck yeah, let's go. This game rocks. It's impossible for me to not talk about and sound like I'm a crazy person because it's just so good.
It is very good. The last thing I will say, I promise, Robbie, you'll talk about Zelda on this podcast. The last thing I will say is the game also has a ton of replayability, like going through the games multiple times, just like how any character action game. But something that's really fun and a nice little added detail is there's parts in the game where you're not supposed to have certain abilities because story reasons, but you come back with it. Specifically, macaron is an assist. So it's really funny. The way they work around it is basically Cinnamon breaks the fourth wall of just like, Chai, you're not supposed to do that. Don't beat this area with macaron. And if you do it anyway, Peppermint's like, well, what now? And so it's like, don't worry, I'm just gonna play the cutscene anyway. And it's so stupid. And they just do it.
Oh man,
it's great. Oh my god. Okay.
Everything.
It's such a good game. Okay.
We gotta
go. We gotta go talk about something. Robert, how you been liking Tears of the Kingdom? I kind of took away the suspense of your thing, but I feel like it was.
Oh wow, I had like a whole like intro and everything. Wow, okay.
Okay. You know what? We'll restart. We'll pretend I didn't just say it. All right, Robert. What is your game of the year, Robert? What could be better than Hi-Fi Rush?
So 6 years ago, the Nintendo Switch came out along with Breath of the Wild. That game took everybody by storm. Like, it redefined Zelda for so many people. And the question everyone asks themselves, how can they follow up to this?
How could they?
And 6 years later, Nintendo said, bet. And then Tears of the Kingdom came out.
Whoa!
And you thought Breath of the Wild was expansive.
I did think that.
You thought you could do anything in Breath of the Wild.
I thought that.
Tears of the Kingdom said, hold my beer.
I'm holding the beer! Do you like these reactions?
They give you so much freedom to, like, encounter things any way you want. There's so much more stuff to explore, so many ways to do it. It's insane. You're like, how did they do this? What kind of black magic did they pull? Because this game has like virtually no glitches, no bugs. All the systems work as intended, and people are building giant freaking dick stick figures with flamethrowers.
Oh, so God, it was day one when that shit. I was on Twitter like day one. That was the first thing I saw about the game. before I even saw IGN's review on it, the first thing I saw was someone made a giant man and made his penis on fire and then blew up. Like,
It is
bro, did
bold
you skip the
exploding.
cutscenes just to do this? Like, my man knew exactly what he was doing when he saw the trailer for that game.
And thus Jeremy was born.
Yeah. Is that what his name is? That's the community name?
I think that's what we've called it. Is just,
The
is
community has a
Jeremy
name
now.
for Jeremy? Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah. Talk a
But-
little bit about, like, the mechanics of the game.
So, to rewind a little bit.
Yeah.
So, Tears of the Kingdom was here to kind of rectify some of the problems people had with, like, the original Breath of the Wild. One of them being, like, the story, where the story kind of just felt there. Like, I wouldn't say it was an afterthought, but a lot of your story elements are just kind of Link and Zelda's kind of relationship and with the other champions, like, before the calamity struck, kind of as, like, a backstory. So it's like you were glimpsing into the past, but you didn't feel like a big active role with it or like an urgency to go after those memories, which is why a lot of people didn't get all the memories to see all those events. But with Tears of the Kingdom, the way that they set up the story is that there are the memory system again, but you feel so much more inclined to go after them because at the beginning of the game, you enter like this mysterious chasm of Zelda, and you find this corpse with a hand attached to it, which is revealed to be the corpse of Ganondorf as he was sealed away. And Zelda gets sent completely somewhere else, and you're tasked with finding her. And those memories kind of show what Zelda's been up to, leading to the where like Link is. So it's like, okay, this is how everything kind of pieces together, like Ganondorf's like rise to power, how Zelda and them were trying to combat like Ganondorf even like back when he was like gaining power. So it's like you want to see how all of this comes in, and the system of like how they do that is also so much more like engaging because there's like these giant glyphs that are hard to miss. Because the thing of like the memories in like the original game was that you just had to reference a picture, and some of those pictures, like yeah, they were pretty good landmarks, but you would have to like kind of look for the location. But here you have a big general area. It's like, hey, it's somewhere in here, so it's a lot easier to get the story, and it's so much easier to care about it because there's a lot more stakes to it than Breath of the Wild, in the terms of us as the viewer. It's like you want to see what happens. And
Yeah.
even like the fast forwarding of it to like the dungeons and such, the story that goes with like the dungeons and like the characters, like reasons for going there and what they get from it is so much more engaging because it's like you get to actually work with these characters instead of just like a one-off set piece. So it's like you kind of build a relationship with these characters that you really didn't get as much of in Breath of the Wild. So it feels like everyone just has a more active role in what's going on. And it's been a nice change of pace because we didn't really get that in Breath of the Wild. And that was like
Yeah.
a thing I really wanted to see from like a sequel, is just having a story to care about. I still honestly wouldn't call it like a masterpiece storytelling. It does kind of get the twists aren't terribly surprising once you kind of get more of like the story context,
Yeah.
but just the way it kind of wraps together is a lot more of like a satisfying narrative than Breath of the Wild.
Nah, I gotcha.
But enough of the story. Now we're
Yeah,
going
no one
to
cares
on
about
to,
that.
Yeah. Now we get to the new stuff.
Yeah.
So, a big thing that Tears of the Kingdom emphasizes is the building mechanic.
Mhm.
So, Link's new arm has this thing where he gets to change the world around him and modify objects with the hand. So he can pick up objects, stick them together, and make some makeshift like cars, tanks, you name it, you can probably make it. Army of Jeremy Dick figures, the works.
Priorities.
But what the game also does is has a feature where there's the weapon degradation, which is back in Breath of the Wild, but there's a new twist onto it where there's a fusion system. So virtually anything you can like pick up, you can attach to your weapons and shields and have whole new effects. Like, if you want to put a bomb on a sword, you could do it. You could have that bomb on the end of the sword. Just
Now,
make
question.
sure you're not close to it when it hits
I'm going to say, does that work exactly how I would think about hitting someone with a bomb 5
As
feet
a
away?
person who did that as soon as they landed in Hyrule, I can tell you it does exactly what you would expect.
Okay, cool. Just making sure.
Yeah. You get a little rocket, you can attach that to your shield, and you can use that to, like, send you
I've
upwards.
seen people like Superman away with the rocket.
Like,
what the fuck?
Yeah, like up in the air, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, there's just so much freedom you get, and there's, like, materials scattered everywhere. Like, all throughout the world, there's stuff you could put together and try some crazy shit with. It's like, if you think, like, in Breath of the Wild, oh, you see it, you could get there and see what's up there. With Tears of the Kingdom, it's, what kind of messed up contraption can I make with this, and how can I abuse this? And you could do it. Pretty much anything that you think you want to try, it's going to be possible to do.
Yeah.
Like, if it's, like, getting from point A to point B in some, like, fancy way, or even just, like, how can, like, make combat more interesting. There are plenty of ways to do that.
If you don't think this game is creative, again, in the first like couple of days, someone somehow recreated like up the basically a plane crashing into the side of a building. And she's like, how the hell did you build a plane in this game? And apparently I learned later, that's very easy. That's one of the easier things you can do.
Yeah. No, I've seen someone build, like, a full-on sedan.
Yeah. I'm like, what the?
Like, they got a roof, they got headlights and everything. Like,
Wow.
It's like, how do you people do this? It's, like, the coolest thing ever. It's, like,
Yes,
just
sir.
going on, like, Twitter and just seeing what all, like, kind of contraptions people make. Like, it's incredible. It's so much fun.
It's-
And that's not even getting to the Koroks.
Yeah. The actual.
The Koroks are back. If you played the original Breath of the Wild, they're back. And there's some of them that have, like, these backpacks attached to them where you have to, like, take them to their friend, which they'll have, like, a marker somewhere else that, like, have to take them to.
Yeah.
You could do all kinds of things with them because you could grab them and you could attach them to stuff. So the amount of ways I've seen people torture those little fucks is insane. I've seen full-on, like, barbecues.
I'm about
I've
to
seen
say,
firing
no.
squads.
I didn't even know, like,
Launching
if you
the moon.
just looked on Twitter about this game, you would think this game was about, like, a sadistic man attacking Koroks. Because, goddamn, what is wrong with people? People are doing, like just, like you said, barbecues,
Yeah.
gas chambers, just whatever the worst possible thing you could think of, they've done to these freaking Koroks that are just trying to go home.
People have turned Link into a fucking psycho.
Right.
It's
That'd be fun
you
if
don't
like
think he
that'd be
had
fun
it
if
in
like
him.
this like Ganon saw you. It's like, Link, are you on my side? Like, cause you're doing more harm to this land than I ever actually did, man. What are you doing to the people?
Hyrule's in a restoration phase, and Link's going to send it right back to how it was.
Link wasn't even trying
No,
to save
this
Zelda.
game is-
She was just in the way between him and torturing Koroks.
Yeah. Just this
Oh,
this
yeah.
game is incredible. I can't believe that they like took what they did in Breath of the Wild and made it so much more fun and so much more expansive without it just like feeling like redundant.
Yeah.
Because that was like my biggest like worry was that they were really doing this to like cash off the success of Breath of the Wild. And, like in a way that's also kind of true, but they also just had so much fun making it. Like
Yeah.
you could tell that the developers just had a fucking blast like putting all this together. Like I was reading something earlier where it was like the ascend ability that was originally just like a dev thing to like, okay, we made caves now, let's get out of them quickly. And they're like, you know what? Let's just make that a gameplay mechanic. Where instead of having to like you explore a cave and have to walk back out, why don't you just like ascend? Like why don't you just go through the roof and pop out back in the field? Like that's like something that I think is really cool. Is like, all right, we can do this to
Yeah.
kind of test. Why don't we just let people play this as a feature?
You know, that's kind of wild, and the more that like I think about this game, the more I'm like, no, that makes a lot of sense, because this game does kind of feel like Link's just playing as one of the developers and just moving and rearranging stuff as he sees fit. And I'm like, yeah, that
It's
makes
like,
complete sense.
it's like Breath of the Wild already had a really fun sandbox, and this is just the developers just playing with it and all these mechanics and just seeing what they can do with it. And then
Yeah.
they also just give that to the player. It's like they know what people want and what they think would be really fun, and it works.
Now,
Like it just
yeah.
you could just tell that like this was originally gonna some of this was gonna be like concepts they wanted to try in DLC of like Breath of the Wild, but they were like, you know what? We're probably better just making a whole new game. Like that's how many ideas they had with this,
Yeah.
and you could really feel it.
Now, Robert, I do have because one of the only, or one of like the major criticisms that I have seen with the game, and I was going to ask your opinion on it, but one complaint some people have is like the control scheme for at least attaching two items together and like some other things isn't the best, and it's kind of like because the way that you attach two items is, let's say you have a rock and you have a sword in your hand. But if your rock's in your inventory, you have to go equip the rock, throw it on the ground, go back, equip the sword, and then you can fuse that, or I think you can still fuse it while it's in your hand, instead of just like having a second menu where if it's already in your inventory, you can throw them together.
Yeah. So, yeah, I know what you're getting at. It's like if you have like some like monster part that's in your inventory, it's like yeah, you can only combine things that were like on the field already. So like it's how they would like continue to do it is you kill like a monster and then like its parts drop on the ground, then you just activate fuse to like combine it. But it's like if you stockpile stuff and kind of want to use it at the right moment, you kind of have to interrupt combat enough and hope that you don't get like hit trying to get your fusion together.
Yeah.
And another kind of thing I was thinking with the fusion system is that like if there's multiple things in like a group like together, you kind of have to be careful to make sure you're like fusing the right thing, because so many times I've like accidentally fused like a rock instead of like a horn, like a monster horn. So it's like, well, I didn't want a blunt weapon, but now I'm kind of stuck with this. And the only way you can really unfuse a weapon is if you take it to like a certain NPC in like a late, I would say late game area, but you kind of have to go out of your way to get there. So it kind of adds like an extra bit of like tedium that honestly I feel like they should have just let you like break apart objects when you wanted to, instead of go here, pay the guy 20 rupees and he'll take them apart. Like that feels more clunky than it really should. Like I really think they should have just let you like disassemble things at will.
So I still think the game like overall is good, but there are a few little like almost more like quality of life like kind of nitpicky things that like I feel like they can either do with like a DLC update or something like that, just like kind of making controls a little bit better, a little bit more like user friendly.
Yeah, I don't think the controls themselves are what's like the problem. I think it's just how they set that up.
Yeah, I guess maybe not controls in the right word, but I guess like I don't know if I want to say mechanics or like I get like specifically the building mechanics. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Breath of the Wild, like that was definitely one of the ones where it was like, I mean, that was your most anticipated game of last year, as well as like everyone else. Like that was like all eyes were looking at this game. Like if it flopped, it would have been awful. But
it had some pretty big shoes to fill, but I think it definitely like surpassed its expectations. I don't think everybody would really feel that way, because some people are definitely going to be more privy towards like Breath of the Wild over Tears of the Kingdom, and it's something that some people, they're not going to be able to go back to Breath of the Wild after this. That's how much like freedom and like enjoyment Tears of the Kingdom can give.
Where are you at with that?
On that spectrum, I'm honestly more on Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah.
Like Breath of the Wild took me a bit to get into. Like when I beat it the first time, I didn't come off of it really loving it. I kind of wanted a more like traditional Zelda because Breath of the Wild was like very radically different from like traditional like Zelda. So
Yeah.
it kind of bummed me out that this is kind of going to be probably the new like formula and standard going forward is this big open style game. And it's like that's cool. I have a lot of fun with it. But what I kind of miss is a lot of like the big set PC stuff because that is kind of another problem I do have with Tears of the Kingdom is that even though I think like the dungeons and the shrines are generally better, um, I still think that they're kind of weak in the sense of like they're not super challenging to like figure out the puzzles because Breath of the Wild's mechanics kind of break a lot of it. Especially even Tears of the Kingdom having like the rewind ability or the ascend ability, you can kind of break puzzle solutions very easily. Which like yeah,
Yeah.
it's cool that you kind of get the freedom to do that, but it's like if you think outside of the box to that extent, you can really solve like half the game's puzzles just with that. So it feels like I feel like they should have constricted design a little bit more in that aspect, just to
Yeah.
kind of make you have to think a little more. But I also understand the reason why they do that because like they give you these tools and they want you to feel like you could do anything with them, and that works. It's a whole lot of fun because
But
it's
it's
like
yeah, but
you
it's
feel
hard
like
to
you're breaking the
yeah.
game,
Well, it's
but you're
hard to
really not.
design a puzzle around when the mechanic is do whatever you want. It is
Yeah,
it's,
exactly.
so I guess
It's like
that's fair.
It's like you still have the shrines, which like limit like your ability to like take things out to like kind of break puzzles. Because something I forgot to mention was like you can store these tools called like the Zonai tools, which is like you can save stuff like fans, balloons, fire hydrants, flamethrowers, whatever you really can grab. But
Yeah.
you can use that stuff in the overworld to like build all these weird contraptions. But in the shrines, they don't let you do that, so you're kind of stuck with what they give you. So like in that sense, you're constricted. But it's like, okay,
Hmm.
rewind's fucking broken.
Yeah.
Like any reason, like you have to like cross a gap. You just grab an object, move it
Oh,
like as
move it over
close as
there,
you
bring
can
it
to the
back,
gap,
and then
bring it back, and
rewind.
then
Yeah.
rewind, like get on it and rewind, and that solves your problem.
Yeah.
Like you could solve so many problems just using rewind. Which yeah, it's a fun as fuck ability, but it also breaks
But
things
it's
in half.
very yeah. So that's an interesting problem. I don't know if I've ever seen that problem of like you have too much freedom in a game. So the game like in a single player game where it's hard to balance around like the god level powers that the devs gave you. It makes it fun. But yeah, I
It's
guess
like if you know how to use the game's systems, you could bend it to your will very
yeah.
easily.
I guess that's an interesting thing. So Robert, here's my last question for you. This game will most likely probably get some form of DLC like the last one. But what I'm more questioning about is for the future of Legend of Zelda, um, would you want them to keep doing this kind of style where they just keep adding more and more like weird things and it's very open world like, or would you want them to kind of go back to the traditional style of Legend of Zelda? Kind of like how Assassin's Creed doing right now. It has its open world RPGs, but the next game that's coming out is gonna be like a more like single player classic Assassin's Creed game.
Yeah. I would honestly kind of like a little more like constricted experience, which like oh people might like freak out like oh no they're going to take away freedoms. It's like I think what Tears of the Kingdom's kind of on the borderline of is that there's too much like to explore and to like do because the playable area of Breath of the Wild was already like massive, and a lot of that area is in the game still, like but like changed. Like Hyrule's changed over the time period between Breath of the Wild and Tears, but then they also added like a whole brand new section of the sky, which is like there's like portions of the sky where you can explore like these floating islands with different things going on. And then there was another thing that Nintendo kind of kept hush hush until like honestly when the game was coming out was the depths, which is this underground area of Hyrule, which is as big as the entire map. Like it spans the exact same range. So they've effectively made 2.5 times the playable area of Breath of the Wild. And that could kind of feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of worried that they might have bit off a little too much in the play area. So it's like there's definitely people that can feel like overwhelmed just with the amount of stuff there is to do.
Like if
'Cause,
they
like-
were to do a third game like this, it just wouldn't be set in Hyrule anymore. Because like there's nowhere.
They would need to make a new version of Hyrule.
It would just
I
have to be a
think.
different map. Like a, yeah.
I think we need a new map for sure. Like I think they've really done about all they can do with this version of Hyrule. Which, granted, they've made it work. They did a good job.
It definitely fits this world. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like they even made it feel fresh again with the changes that they made between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. So it's like
wait.
exploring Hyrule again.
He said the name of the podcast. Sorry, I had to do that. He said fresh. Wait for it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But yes, they made this version feel revived.
It feels fresh because it's like you go to all these areas that you've been in through the first game, and they're changed in some way. Like you go to the Rito village in like the snowy area of the map. At first, it was like kind of like a say a taiga type thing, but it's like it was like grass and stuff around it, and then it's like you get there in Breath of the Wild, it's frozen over.
Yeah.
There's like this big snowstorm that like drastically changes the area and how you explore it. It's like, okay, this is neat. And then you go to like the desert, and there's like these big sandstorms that like block your vision through most of it. It's
does it
it
still
feels
have-
like fresh navigating these areas again.
Does it still have the
Like, so-
mechanics where like if you're dressed poorly for the conditions, it'll hurt you? Like if you have a bikini on in the
It's still like that.
Yes.
Okay.
So you still have to account for that, so you need to prep with either gear or food items
That's
to
good.
kind of circumvent the
Yeah.
conditions. Which food is also a very good mechanic.
Yeah.
People take advantage of it. It also could break boss fights with attack buffs.
So I saw like a short of somebody like, because there's another weapon that like does like double damage when it's about to break or something wild, and then
Technically, all weapons kind of have that built into them.
Yeah.
It's like usually the last or so hits or throws with
Yeah.
it does do double damage.
Yeah.
But he did this thing where like he ate a specific meal, had a specific weapon attachment, got it to almost break, and then like basically almost 3 hit a boss or something crazy.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, and like these are things that you could also do in Breath of the Wild. as
Yeah.
well. Like those elements are still there. Like you could, you could still like eat like certain kinds of meals, wear certain outfits, and use certain like things to like buff yourself up.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I guess the point of what you were originally asking was I would definitely prefer like a little more of like a what's a completely linear but a little more like scaled down
Yeah.
version of the game.
We're like,
I think what kind of helped me like Tears of the Kingdom a little more also was just having like Skyward Sword HD come out, to where I kind of got to have that like linear
Yeah.
fix, because I never beat Skyward Sword when it like first came out. I ended up dropping it just because I kind of found it boring.
also
Then,
yeah,
like,
those
the,
motion controls.
The
were
remaster
not
or the
a-
HD
yeah.
version had a lot of quality of life that made me actually like the game quite a bit.
Yeah. It
So
had
just
good
having that like
controls.
fixed definitely like it didn't make me feel as like hungry for it as I was when I played Breath of the Wild.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. Well, I think that's about everything with Breath of the Wild, unless either you or Seth want to chime in any final remarks.
Yeah. I've been like a little bit quiet on this because honestly, I've just been kind of like letting Robert cook on this one.
Yeah.
I've also been playing Tears of the Kingdom. Definitely not as much as Robert has. It seems like there's 4 primary dungeons. I've only done 1 so far. But I also recently beat Breath of the Wild earlier this year, so I feel like I have a pretty good point of like comparison with this game. It is really good. I do like the amount of like kind of player choice that and all of the player choice like kind of stuff really just kind of stems from how you use certain things inside your environment and make it work for you, like building bridges, building vehicles, building contraptions. There's all kinds of like different combinations, and the game allows for it. I'm in one of those weird spots where it's definitely taking a lot of things from Breath of the Wild and just tweaking them, making them better. Like, for example, I feel a lot of the abilities here are uh, definite improvements over the ones in Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild kind of felt a bit, they were useful, but kind of like situational, you know? Like stasis is cool, but how many times did you actually use it in a way that was very helpful for you besides like maybe knocking something into something or like getting a couple of extra hits in on a boss or something along those lines. Um, cryo was it called? I think it was called like cryokinesis or something like that.
The freeze one.
Like also only used in water and stuff like that. Like these were all situational powers. I feel like with the combination of like the ascension ability and the fuse ability and the recall ability, these are all things that you're gonna more naturally have different ways to tinker around with, and it makes it feel like you have way more choice to approaching it.
I would definitely say this. I used all of the abilities in Tears of the Kingdom so much more frequently than half the abilities in Breath of the Wild. Because most of the time, Breath of the Wild, I just use the bombs, the two different kinds of bombs. I don't feel like any ability is very like redundant in Tears of the Kingdom. I think they all add something new that you're going to feel is going to be useful in a lot of situations.
There's a lot of different like ways to like mess with situations, and it kind of and like I think that's neat. The thing with like Tears of the Kingdom with me so far is I do think just about everything is an improvement over Breath of the Wild, but it makes it a little bit difficult for me to just outright say like, oh, it's a great sequel. It's like this feels more like a big expansion rather than a full-fledged sequel, and I think it's inescapable because like we're on the same map, and yes, there are new areas to explore. There's a whole bunch of new areas to explore. The Sky Islands, the underground, that kind of reminds you of like Elden Ring, where like you kind of go down, it's like, oh shit, this whole world's opening up. But you're also hitting a lot of like familiar notes of places you've kind of been to, and as a result, it makes me get like a really big deja vu, and it almost makes me. I think there's a conversation. Personally, I would still say this game is a sequel. I think it does enough to make it feel different, where you could definitely say this is a sequel, not just an expansion. And there's all loads of content, absolutely. But I definitely can see it being argued that way. I think one thing that I am finding that maybe I can only play Tears of the Kingdom in like bursts. Just because I think it's a pretty fun, chill experience, but it's not a game I'm finding myself sitting on hours on end. Mostly just because it's a game where, and I'm not necessarily looking for a higher difficulty. I agree with something with like Robert, where it's almost a bit too much freedom. Basically, I've never found myself going into a situation ever underprepared or not ready for it or something like that, just because because the game is always making sure you have something in your environment that you can use very easily to. But as a result, it kind of makes it feel like there's no tension of like, will I be able to solve this? Will I get around it? Of course you can. You have all the tools you need right at your hands. It's all over. And the reason I bring that up is because, like, with some other games, what makes those really fun for me is sometimes by limiting players' freedoms, it forces them to use things or put them into situations to where they have to like it's like kind of like edge of your seat, like nail biting, like I don't know if this plan's gonna work, but I gotta try it because I'm running out of options here, kind of deal. I never get that feeling in Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. And I know that people are like, oh, there's like master modes and shit and stuff like that. I'm not looking for a more difficult game, you know? I feel like it's a design thing where it's just like, yeah, I can do things differently, but I also have to make sure I do that and not like get into typical like dull brain gamer brain of like, oh, I'm just going to do it the same way over and over and over. Like I could just build the same bridge over, or I can just throw another pine cone in the fire and just like lift off of that, you know?
Yeah, that's kind of the thing of like Tears of the Kingdom is like it feels like some of those like solutions are applicable to like half the game's problems. It's like
Yeah.
once you find like the golden solution, like the golden key, it pretty much like makes everything, everything like half the game easy because you already have like a solution that works for most things.
You almost have to like add your
Yeah,
own challenge. Like how do I solve this without just doing
like-
the easy answer?
Yeah, because it's like I would try to solve some puzzles in like a shrine, and it's like if I couldn't really figure out like what to do like naturally, I could just kind of use rewind for some puzzles, and just use like rewind on some object to like keep something lit a little longer or keep a door open to like get through. It's like that if it almost feels like you're taking the challenge out because you use the solution. So it's like I
Yeah.
feel like I have to handicap myself just to kind of get more of like a challenge out of this. Which
Because like
I kind of hate feeling like.
Yeah, because it's like it's cool the first time you manage to get your way around the shrine because you recalled or you abused the shit out of rockets on your shield or something. It's fun the first time, and it's like, oh, look how I figured it out this way. But then once you start to realize like I can kind of do it this way with a bunch of them, it starts to like it gets a bit old. It's something I've heard before where like when you give a player a little bit too much freedom, they start to kind of fall into the same sort of like patterns. But I will say that like I don't know. Like I said, it's a game that I'm still in the process of playing and I'm enjoying. I will say that there is some elements of like I think the shrines in Breath of the Wild might be a bit better just because more often than not they kind of there was ways to bust them for sure, but more often than not I think those shrines, because the player had less freedom, it did a better job of like kind of getting the player to see as like a solution in a certain unique kind of way. Because like there's sometimes where I feel like, oh, did I just miss out on like a really cool thing about this shrine because I did it in a really sort of fucky way. So I don't know. I like my feelings on it is it's a solid game, but I'm not sure if it's necessarily a better game than Breath of the Wild. I think it's great, but I also think that it's a great game. It offers a lot of freedom, but I in the long term, even though it's marginally better than Breath of the Wild, I don't think it's going to have the same lasting impact as Breath of the Wild did.
I don't
If
think
that-
so either. I honestly think that like yeah, Tears of the Kingdom builds upon Breath of the Wild, but it's not going to have the same cultural impact that
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild had, because we're still feeling the impact of that game to this day with like open world games.
Breath of the
And
Wild was
we're
just
still
like so
thinking-
different from any other
I don't
Zelda
think Tears of the
games.
Kingdom can have that same kind of power just
The-
because of like its core mechanics, like are that game's identity.
Yeah. The only way
Yeah.
for them to do it differently is to just start over and just do something else again. To like,
But I will
even-
agree with like, but and I don't want to come off as like too negative. These are just like things that I'm feeling right now, as I'm playing the game. But I do want to say that there are a lot of like great elements. One, I do agree with Robert. The story feels a lot more active this time around. There's a lot more characters at play. Not just at the different dungeons you visit and the people you meet there, which I think it's nice too that they're bringing back a lot of characters who, you got to interact with in Breath of the Wild, but maybe not as much, and they feel a bit more active. Like the damn horny people over Pura, I know, it's good to see that like she has more of a role here now in the game. At least in the early part, she seems to, and the fact that like I went to Rito Village and I can't remember his name, but the one dude that that helped out Link get onto the Divine Beast in Breath of the Wild, like you meet him and his son Tulin. Like I think that's cool that they like bring these characters back and acknowledge them and kind of
This person
acknowledge that
exists.
they've moved on with their lives in Link's absence. I think the best thing though about this game that's still absolutely goated though is the music. I definitely think the music here is much better. It still has those like really nice, like almost minimal, like natural kind of themes that Breath of the Wild had. But Tears of the Kingdom does really cool things about like making the music like this is a darker title than Breath of the Wild. The opening cutscene solidifies that.
Yeah.
And and as a result, the music reflects that. Some of like the times when the notes are reversing backwards and just sounds like very eerie. One of my favorite things I talked with Robert is my favorite theme from Breath of the Wild was the Rito Village theme. Whenever the strings come into that song, it gives these vibes of like nostalgia and longing for home. That's the kind of ways I've always read into a Rito Village theme. And I also know that like apparently it's actually originally come from something in Wind Waker, apparently. So I know that, but like I really like the Breath of the Wild theme. Rito Village was always my favorite. The version you get here where you return to Rito Village, it's frozen over, is the song reflects that too. It's colder. It's while you're still getting the same little bits of like the main little like melodies in there, it's a little bit distorted. It feels colder because what I noticed was there was the absence of strings in this version of the song. It stuck with me. It gives this haunting feel to Rito Village, especially when you're walking around and you're realizing all the adults are gone and the only people left here are the kids, and it's like something has gone really wrong here. And I really like that. I really like how they remix the song, and it makes it more fun. And of course, once you able to get the blizzard to subside, the original theme returns. And I think these are just nice little touches. I really love the. I think that's my favorite thing about also Breath of the Wild as well. Is I think better than anything else about this game, better than its world, better than its art design, better than its whatever, its gameplay, is the music. The music in these games kick major ass. I don't know if they do best soundtracks.
I think they do best scores for the Game Awards.
Does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Xenoblade 3 got fucking gypped to God of War.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I really think this game is like up there. Obviously, Hi-Fi Rush, I'm all over that soundtrack too. But this game has a really great soundtrack, and I really love the ways that like it is taking elements of like the older soundtrack and messing around with them to fit the themes of this game better.
Something that I really like that they also do with the music is like when you're diving off of like the Sky Islands down to Hyrule, it's like you get this kind of like building up music, and then you get this big triumphant like I was a chorus, but whatever the big point of the song is. Music terms evade me. But it like ends in like this big triumphant note, like you're about to go land and explore. But when you like dive down to the depths, you have that same build up, and then it just goes up to those like the grrr with all the horns in like an ominous way. So it's like you're diving out down to the unknown. It's dark, it's creepy, there's monsters everywhere. They really build the feel of dread just going in and exploring this place. And there's just so like this very like ominous little music in the background. And it sets like the tone for like exploring like this whole big dark cavern in this really nice way.
It's like as soon as those horns come in, it just drowns out everything else, and it just any confidence that you had going into this is just immediately sucked out of you. It's just like, yeah, no, you're now in their world, and this is their playground. So yeah, I agree with Robert that too. I also like how they integrated with the underground, where I talked with Robert about this. Is it feels like the game is delving more into like survival style elements, like survival game stuff, where it's like you need to not only manage like your health and stuff like that, especially since there's the provision of gloom, which can take away your maximum heart count temporarily, but also like you have to get a light source of some sort. So like when you're underground in the depths, you're as well. So it feels like that they're borrowing elements from like survival style games there too. I think that's neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this all started with final thoughts, so I'd imagine that's probably your final thoughts on that, because we have done that for a while.
So my final thoughts on Tears of the Kingdom are: I think it's a great game. As a sequel to Breath of the Wild, I think it's fun. It follows up well, but I can't really say for sure which one I liked more, because there's things about one that I like more than the other. As a whole, I had more fun with Tears of the Kingdom, I think, but I also think that the amount of freedom could is kind of a detriment in some aspects. Even though I'm having a good time, I find myself, like Seth was saying, doing the same stuff over and over. So I put about 105 hours into the game. I finished it. I haven't done all the shrines and all the side quests, but I did all the main story elements, did all the memories, and I think the game ends well. I It doesn't feel like they're setting up for like a third game, which I'm honestly kind of happy about. Like it
Yeah.
feels pretty conclusive to what it is. So like I'm glad it seems like they'll, even if it's like still a pretty open style game, I think we're going to have a different Hyrule and different characters, which is a good thing in my opinion.
Yeah.
Or just go to a different place. Like I
Yeah.
do envision that like when they move forward with this game, I do imagine there will be some form of like Breath of the Wild 3. Like I feel like Nintendo knows what they have, and with the success, they're gonna retread some of that too. But I think the third game is not going to be back in
Here's
Hyrule. I
my-
think they're going to try to venture out and try to like be more exploratory.
Here's my my bold prediction for the next game. It'll be a while, and I think Robert's right. There might be like a more traditional Zelda between this. But if they ever do this or a DLC for this game, my prediction. Do you guys remember A Link Between Worlds and like how there's High Rule and Low Rule? With like
That's essentially what the dev says. So,
yeah, I mean that's basically what it is, but that's kind of like I hope I'm wrong because I feel like it'll be a lot of treading the same ground. But I feel like that's where like my mind goes, where like alternate dimension, basically still Hyrule, like in low rule.
like Breath of the Wild's DLC was kind of like these challenge maps, challenge rooms, and then like some distorted area, kind of like some of the distorted areas, like the Silent Realm and Skyward Sword, kind of had some of those vibes, and add like a new dungeon to get you like the motorcycle or something.
Yeah,
It's like if anything, they would have DLC along that line, where it's like you get a couple new little things to do, but it's nothing gonna be like extraordinary. I don't think.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like Nintendo's really big on like whenever a game is coming out, they usually try to make it like a. I imagine the philosophy is it's supposed to be like a holistic experience. So I feel like they're not going to really put like very story heavy centric kind of DLC for this game. I just don't think they will.
Because even like the
Right.
Champions Ballad from like Breath of the Wild wasn't super story driven. Like he kind of gave you just a little bit more of like the backstory.
fair.
Yeah, and like obviously it gives like Link his own quote unquote like divine beast, which is a motorcycle, which is cool.
Anything?
Yeah, like, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they go forward with this. And I feel like as I play more of Tears of the Kingdom, I like even though I hope I didn't come off too negative because I think as I play it, I think I'm going to enjoy it more because I personally thought the dungeon that I cleared, and this is like I said the first one, I thought the dungeon I cleared was very good. You know, it had fun little puzzles. It didn't rely on the same gimmicks, kind of like Breath of the Wild did, where a lot of the divine beasts were all like, "Oh, you can move parts of the damn divine beast," and it ended up all of them started doing that, and then all of them kind of had the same boss. And it's nice to see, like, I was actually like really happy to see there was a unique creature that you had to fight instead of just one of the damn Blight Ganons again. So like I think, and that was a high point. Like I really enjoyed that boss fight. Plus also there's like these little moments where I have a lot of fun where I remember there was a chest behind like a gated wall and like a little hole in it. And what I did was it felt like the most basic dumb brain way of doing it. But like I took like a bunch of like icicles, attached them to one on the end, and just lifted it with Ultra Hand through the hole, poked the chest, attached it, and then pulled it right out. It felt like something like Pirates of the Caribbean, where they like they use like a stick of some sort to get the key off a sleeping guard or something. Is what I felt like I was doing. It's like I'm just using a big stupid stick to open this. But yeah, I think as I play the game, I'm going to imagine that it's going to only get better from here because I really do like the dungeons.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is our 3 big Game of the Year predictions. I will we'll do a quick little, and we won't go like super in depth with any of these, but a quick little rapid fire of like some honorable mentions. 'Cause I'm sure I'd imagine a few of you guys have those. But at least for me personally, I also really did enjoy Jedi Survivor. If it wasn't obvious by the podcast we did and the review of it, we talk very in depth about that, so I won't get into it. But basically, combat's great. It's a lot of improvements. But obviously, the big frame rate is the big drawback, and that's why that doesn't get number one. And also, it's rare that a fighting game. I don't think a fighting game has ever won Game of the Year, but Street Fighter 6 is making a big impact. It's really fun. It is the most like feature rich a Street Fighter has ever been. They're not doing the five what they do with Street Fighter 5 where they like add little things over time. No, it is a full game when you actually buy it, and there's a lot of different modes, and that's been really fun. And that's kind of like my honorable mentions. Seth, do you have any last minute games you want to talk about?
Not really. I mean, obviously I've played a lot of games, but like weirdly enough, like I played Jedi Survivor and I liked it. I wasn't super in love with it. If you really want to know our thoughts, go watch our podcast on it.
Yeah.
Let's go plugging.
Yeah, I also made shorts on it, and Seth made like a short on the one before it.
Yeah. We have like a bunch of content, so really like if you want to see like a lot of our thoughts on it, go check it out. Other than Jedi Survivor, I really haven't played anything new on it. So yeah. So I don't really have anything to recommend
fine.
as like an honorable mention. R4 remake and Hi-Fi Rush. That's really it.
Yeah, that's good.
And
Robert.
Zelda. And Zelda. Yeah.
Yeah,
Zelda
no, that's good. Robert, before we get into the fresh picks, any last honorable mentions from you?
Honorable mentions. I had a lot of fun with Fire Emblem Engage. Definitely not everyone's cup of tea, but I think for like the strategy gameplay, it was really solid. You got a lot of freedom with like the systems without it feeling too broken. Story was alright. Characters were fun. Maps were interesting. Art style, I think, it's very anime, but I think it's gonna hold up pretty well in the future.
Yeah.
Other thing to mention is, if I can count a DLC,
Sure.
Future Redeemed for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. It was a great way to conclude the storyline that they've been building since Xenoblade Chronicles. I loved the return of Shulk and Rex, the protagonists from 1 and 2.
Yeah.
They got a fucking glow up. Like, holy shit, Rex went from like a twink to a fucking Giga Chad. Like, oh my god.
Good man.
Like, that man has been through hell. And let's see. Soundtrack, great. If you like the older games, there's a lot of musical nods. The story itself and the new characters are fun. I like them a lot. It's also pretty short, so if you don't have like a ton of time, it's something you could finish in less than 15 hours, even if you do some side stuff. It's something that you absolutely would have had to play Xenoblade 1, Xenoblade 2, Xenoblade 2 Torna, and Xenoblade 3. And I forgot to mention fucking Future Connected from Xenoblade 1 Definitive.
Alright.
Play all that shit, you're gonna be set for the finale.
I don't know why that cracked me up.
I think my brain died.
I don't think I understood half the things on that rant.
I knew what I was doing.
No, you're good. There's a lot of words said at that point. I'm pretty sure you called someone hot at one point.
He said like future a lot, and that's about as much as like.
He said what?
You
said I got the point where one.
I rapid fired.
You said I did say rapid fire. But God, I didn't realize you had that much ammo.
You thought I had a shotgun, I had a machine gun.
Nah, my man had the extendo mag. Alright. Anyway, that is all for our Game of the Years. Me and Seth both with Hi-Fi Rush, but also Resident Evil 4 Remake, and Robert with Tears of the Kingdom. So
RE4 Remake, sort of. Bake that into sense.
And also RE4. They're good games, and then we're only halfway through the years. We're going to overlap, but that's enough about what's coming out this year and what we think is the best of the best. Let's talk about what has been the best of this past couple of weeks we've been messing around with. And with the fresh picks of the week. We got through that transition eventually. All right, Seth, what have you been playing, watching, or listening to? These past
So
couple
I gotta
months.
clarify. I have not finished it yet, but I have been watching Star Wars Visions Volume 2.
Nice.
I don't know if we ever did a podcast on the original one, but I really love the
Did
original.
we?
It's a
I think
it's a
we did.
big yeah. I'm not sure. We'll need to go back through the archives. Anyways, Star Wars Visions Volume 1, I really love. I'm a big fan of anime and I love Star Wars. And so it was like a perfect marriage. And it's mostly because what makes Star Wars Visions so good, the first volume, is that it's this perfect playground of like, I personally love that it's all non-canon because it basically allows like all these like studios to just go fucking crazy with Star Wars. Like just do whatever they really can imagine with it. So obviously, I was excited for Volume 2. I've only watched the first couple episodes, and while I would say that I'm not. God. While I wouldn't say I'm enjoying it as much as I did the first few or so episodes of like Visions 1, I would say
Yeah.
Volume 2 is good.
Yeah.
Like I appreciate that like they're branching outside of anime style and they're going for more like different kinds of animation studios around the world. It's very fun to see their kind of different takes on the Star Wars universe. I really even though it wasn't as good as the Ronin episode in my opinion, I really like the opening episode, Sith.
Oh yeah.
Because one, that animation style looked gorgeous.
Oh, it's
it
beautiful. Like the
they're doing,
painting
like,
style. Yes.
yeah, it's doing like the Spider-Verse kind of like. I know I've been
Yeah.
saying Spider-Verse a lot, but it literally it's like watercolors and different frame rates and shit like that. It's like it's Spider-Verse style. I really like it. Very simple, but I think effective kind of story too with that first one. And oh my god, slight spoiler for it, but dual colored double bladed lightsaber.
Yeah.
Like, why haven't any of us thought of this? Like, that
Why
almost
can't
had
Cal
like
do
this.
this?
Yeah, like that almost had the same impact as like Night Jedi, where it was just like lightsabers that change colors based on the user.
That's
And
such a
they're like,
good idea. Oh, I wish, dude.
Yeah.
That is one of the best ideas, and I wish that was a real thing in Star Wars. That the saber activated by the Force, and it changes length and like how dense it is and color based on the user. That's so sick. That's such a good
Oh, yeah.
idea. Sorry.
And I think, no, and you're right. And I think that's like one of the cool parts about Visions too, is like you get all these different interpretations. And I think it's still early enough to where I still thoroughly believe that a lot of these are sometimes test runs to basically be like, oh, like, what, maybe we can make a series or something out of this. Because like I know Ronin got like a book. I believe Ninth Jedi got like a manga or something like that.
Yeah.
I really need to look into it. But like, it's cool. And I'm sorry, I meant to make this about Volume 2, not Volume 1 so much.
Fair.
I really like it. But Volume 2 is still good. Like, that animation style with Sith is fantastic. And I really like the second episode. It has
Screecher's Reek is probably one of my favorites from the second one. Yeah.
Yeah, it has kind of like a fairy tale kind of vibe, which I don't think we really see a lot in Star Wars. Like it's like a little bit creepy, dark kind of fairy tale. I really just enjoyed the animation style. It's been great, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to the episode that was animated by the Wallace and Gromit team. That's the one I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, that one's a bit more like
Or, like
cutesy.
stop motion, like claymation kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, that's the one I'm looking forward to the most.
That one's
Because like I'm a big animation freak,
Wait.
so I think that'll be fun.
Is that one? Shoot, is that one "I Am Your Mother"? Or is that one "IU Song"?
I think it's
I think
like,
it's-
I think it's called like Mothers or something.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
okay. Yeah, it's "I Am Your Mother." It's cute. It's cute and silly and funny. You know, I mean, don't expect hyper amazing lightsaber combat, but like also it's the Wallace and Gromit team. Like why would you?
Yeah,
So.
and you know, like I think it'll be fun because like with Visions one, even the ones that weren't my favorite, I still enjoyed. You know, like the little one that was done by the the robot team, the little robot one. That was cute, really cool animation.
Oh,
Yeah.
TOB1. That
Yeah,
one.
that one.
Yeah.
That was cute. I
Yeah.
like that one. It's not my favorite, but it's cool.
No, that one's cool. Probably my favorite I think Screecher's Reek is probably my favorite from like the second volume, but also episode 5. I'm looking up the IMDb. That's why I know all these. Journey to the Darkhead. That one's pretty good. That one is also the most like anime style from like the second batch. So that one's good.
I'm down for that.
Yeah, and same. There's one that's very similar style to like Clone Wars, but it's like almost Indian inspired, like Indian/Hindu inspired Star Wars, which is really cool. Yeah.
Is there now? I gotta ask you, Drew, since you seem to have watched all of it. Now, does I don't? I'm not expecting it to, but do you think like any of this ever reaches the heights of like something like Ninth Jedi or Village Bride, like, or even The Elder from like the first volume?
I think some of them maybe get to the level of The Elder, but like honestly, no, because I think Village Bride and Ninth Jedi are still like the best. I think Ninth Jedi is the best of all of them. So no, not really. A lot of these aren't so much like big spectacle combat. They're kind of slower stories, except for the Journey to the Darkhead, which is why that might be my favorite. And while I think overall it's worse than Volume 1, which is mean to say, but I don't want to say that and think like, oh, it's still bad, because it's still cool the fact that like it's different. It's different, and you can like come into these not knowing anything else about Star Wars and get it. It's fine.
And they're like these like different like interpretations.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes these kind of fun. So
I think
I'm excited.
Yeah. I think the only thing with season 2 is just I looking through it, like there are a few more like kind of whatever ones. Like episode 8, The Pit, is the only one that I would say like I really did enjoy The Pit, because it's just kind of dumb. But I'll have to talk about that once you've actually seen it. Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah. So, with that being said, I did cut you off. Is that all for that? Am I good to keep going?
Yeah, that's basically all my first pick. I'm looking forward to watching more.
Cool. As for me, and this is also, Robert probably would have picked this if I didn't go in front of him, or I didn't tell him I'm going to pick this, don't pick this. And I already talked about it in the honorable mentions, but it is going to be Street Fighter 6. I'm a huge fighting game person, and we've been in a fighting game drought for so long. Last year there was nothing. So much so that as they joke, Sifu almost won fighting game of the year, and that's not a fighting game. It's a single player action game. Anyway, but Street Fighter 6 has come out, and it's great. Like, I've never actually like dive into a Street Fighter game. This is my first one. But it's so feature rich, like it's very user like kind of friendly. It even has like the modern controls if you want to use that. I don't. I kind of like want to dedicate myself to the classic controls, but all the characters feel unique and separate for each other. And what's really good about this, it's really good, especially coming off of like games like a Mortal Kombat or a Mortal Kombat 11 specifically, or a Dragon Ball, where these characters feel like they have a bunch of tools. And like, to explain that well, you have to think of like MK11 was very simplistic, and characters didn't have a lot of options because they had the variation system. And in Dragon Ball, it's a tag game, so characters are limited just because you have to add the tag mechanics and you have to add a bunch of characters. But in this, it's nice to play a fighting game where like me and someone else could have a mirror match and have none of the same strategies, only use the same moves like in combos and stuff, but like play incredibly differently. Almost like if you didn't see the names, you could still tell who was who because of how different people's play styles are. But yeah, the game's really fun. It has a lot of fun new mechanics with like the drive meter, and I love the fact that like you basically have access to all your EX moves and all this drive meter at the very start of the game. You can burn out and like kind of screw yourself over, but like start of the round, if you want to like round start with 3 Dragon Punch DPs from Ken, go ahead. Go right ahead. You can. You just got all the meter you want. So it's really fun. It's really action focused, and I will definitely be playing a lot of it until whenever the new Mortal Kombat game comes out. which is really far from now, probably. So, yeah, Robert.
Drew.
Yes.
No, Drew.
Yeah.
Jury feet pics.
Oh, he's. Oh my gosh.
Fucking damn it, Seth.
Seth, you should have been in the call when me and Robert were playing the beta, and every single time Jury either did her windscreen or did her level 3, I would just pause for a second and go, God, I wish that were me. And then like the big cinematic of her stepping on you.
Podcast. I'm glad you wanted the whole world to know that.
Nobody listens this far in, Robert. I'll be fine.
I will say that, like, I'm surprised that, like, you know, I mean, I understand, like, all the attention is on, like, Cammy and Jury and stuff like that. But damn, I think Kimberly's probably the best looking one, in my opinion.
Wait.
She's the one with the graffiti.
Oh my gosh.
Playing her
No, dude, okay, the reason I paused, I got her name and whatever the name of, like, the Indian girl was, who, like, they say she's 18 but looks like a 12-year-old, and I got really nervous about Seth for a minute.
Is she the one with the big, like, hockey sticks
yes,
or whatever?
Yes, she has the clubs. Yes, the Native American clubs. And that's who I thought Seth was talking about, and I was just like, oh, do I make a joke about it? Do I pause the episode? How the... What? Because that is a child.
I don't fly that way. I know a lot of people are also really into Manon, the ballerina.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, Manon.
Looks like old ass Lady Gaga. No, not that same Lady Gaga's old. I'm talking about like
her character.
The
no, she is. She's just Lady Gaga, like the character. No, I think so. The reason I don't think I care about Kimberly as much is because she's hard to fight against, and so I hate her. So that's why that. And also, I've started playing Cammy, and her standing medium button is a great button. For those who play that game, know exactly what I'm talking about. I also beat Robert.
You want to get the classic outfit, right?
I gotta get the classic out, dude. Still, even with their default outfit, man, that's a button. Oh, that's a button. I don't even think about that button. But yeah, play Street Fighter 6.
Every person is going into practice, and Cammy players are going to study every single frame to a T.
Oh my god. One of the first time I got to play Robert with Cammy, right before recording this, I just used stand medium the whole time. The funniest part was, I won that round. I didn't push a single other button. You can't cancel that button into anything else. That's not a special cancelable button. But it's a good button. It's a fantastic button. I like that button. Anyway, go play Street Fighter 6. It's really good, especially like now that it's early and it's new and people aren't super good at the game yet. It's probably the best time for fighting games to jump in when everyone's so new and doesn't know what it's done. It's the most fun time because you don't have like the sway people doing the most optimal whatever bullshit. It's still people are still just fucking around and dropping stuff, and it's a blast.
Go plan on the people who played the cracked version for like a month.
Yeah, except those. But those guys are in super high ranks, and it takes a while to get there. So
it's just good to see Capcom like always eating good every year. Almost it feels like now. Like
they were in a bad place before, especially with fighting games. So they've kind of been on this like resurgence,
like with Resident Evil.
Yeah,
I don't know about I guess with maybe fighting games since it's only just Street Fighter, but yeah, like Capcom.
No, they do the Marvel vs. Capcom games.
Oh yeah, well there's that too, but like I mean in general, Capcom's just been kind of beating ass with like Resident Evil, and now with Street Fighter 6, and then Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter always like draws them like a bunch of shit. Like it feels like Capcom is just like unstoppable.
They've been on this like resurgence.
The Mega Man Battle Network collection sold like remarkably well.
Yeah.
Like I think that's like the fastest selling Mega Man game, like period.
So even when Capcom doesn't try, it's just like cool.
Yeah.
Because that like came out like a month or two ago, and I think it surpassed like 1 million like sales like faster than like.
I saw that, and I was also like, I remember watching the show of that as a kid and liking that, and I almost like wanted to be like, maybe we should play these games.
I remember going like to the library and like checking out the manga and like reading that during like study hall.
Yeah. I just want to listen to the soundtrack of that game. Like that's about it for me.
So, But we're not talking about Mega Man. We're talking about
Or
Street
Capcom
Fighter.
being goated.
Yeah, go play some Street Fighter. It's really fun, but don't play Kimberly because you're a bad person if you do. Robert, your turn.
At least just send me clips when you do play Kimberly. You could do that for me.
Yeah. So I've been playing a game that came out a while ago. This is a replay technically. Is Bloodborne. I got a random hankering to play Bloodborne again. I'm like, I'm gonna go for the platinum trophy because I want to play another Souls game because I keep coming back to FromSoft games like every month or two. There's always one, and this time it's Bloodborne.
Fucking PlayStation won't give us a goddamn Bloodborne remaster or Bloodborne PC release or Bloodborne anything.
I've been feeling that. Like, playing this on my PS5, I'm like, man, this game, it wants to be 60 frames a second. I can feel it. It's trying.
It wants. It's begging for it.
Let that frame rate out. Let it shine. Let it sing.
I would do like the PlayStation Showcase, that fucking whatever Phantom Blade game that's never gonna come out. Fuck that game. Give me Bloodborne. Give me Bloodborne remastered.
Cancel the soap version of Splatoon. Just give us Bloodborne.
Yes.
Get rid of the. I'm not saying that joke here. That's awful. Let's see. Get rid of Foam Stars. I love Metal Gear Solid 3. Now that I played it this year, and it's great that they're remaking it. I would just like put a gun to the remake's head and blow its brains out if it meant I got Bloodborne 60 frames per second.
Now, guys, there's one game from that showcase that you guys keep skipping. Would you sacrifice Spider-Man 2?
Yes.
Damn.
I'd sacrifice
He didn't even think about it. He didn't even think about it.
I'm sorry, Becca. I'm going to sacrifice Granblue.
Yeah, I would definitely probably kill Spider-Man 2. Nothing against Spider-Man 2. I think it looks neat.
No, it looks fantastic. Great. Oh yeah,
but no.
Bloodborne. Bloodborne's got our soul.
Like that thing should have been a fucking series by now. I'm fucking feral.
I'm feral.
To kind of talk about Bloodborne, besides why it's not.
Yeah. Robert, why do you like Bloodborne? Just let Robert do his pick.
It's aggressive Souls.
Yeah.
It's like Dark Souls. You hide behind your shield. You poke them a couple times. You dodge roll away. In Bloodborne, you want to fucking get in there. You want to get fucking bloody. Like an enemy hits you, you're not gonna run away. You're gonna fucking charge in and hit them back.
And you can parry with a gun.
Yeah, that was my comment. The gun's the parry.
You can parry them with a gun, and then they can take your limits, and you're gonna give them the fucking limits back. They're gonna make them regret the day they gave you limits. And fucking it's just a really fun combat system.
Yeah.
All like the big Lovecraftian horror stuff is really cool and also fucking unnerving. Like, holy crap.
Yeah, still the best Lovecraft game out there, period, and it doesn't even have anything to do with Lovecraft, really.
Thank God.
Yeah, thank God.
It doesn't have racist themes like all other Lovecraftian stories?
No.
And if you think I'm wrong, look up the name of Lovecraft's cat, and then you'll know I'm right. Continue. Don't look at the name yet. Look it up after.
It's great. Bloodborne is a very great game.
Yeah, saying it still being stuck at 30 frames per second makes me like feel the old blood singing. Just like fucking.
I need to kill a space fetus now.
Yeah, the old hunters. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
But it's a great game. If you haven't played it before, play it. It's good.
You heard it here. Play Bloodborne, and make a new one. But there's everything.
You have to make a new one. You just have to remaster it or some shit.
Put it on the PC. Let us mod it.
Let us play.
Oh yeah, I forgot it's not on PC. That's still wild.
Let us turn our
give us a bunch of fucking Horizons, but they won't give us fucking Bloodborne.
Bro, that's wild. They made two Horizon games,
I'll take fucking Aloy and Ratchet and Clank and a bunch of other like Sony exclusives out back if it meant I got Bloodborne like
Shoot him in
remastered.
the head, Jesus Christ.
You stare Ratchet dead in the eye. It's nothing personal.
It's very
You,
personal. This
you
fucks
were
up
in
Bloodborne
the
canon.
way.
Nothing personal to you. This is personal to me.
No, Seth will look them in the eye and just goes, "A hunter must hunt," and then rip his head off. Oh, God. Talented animators, that's your next challenge. All right, but that's everything for this podcast that spiraled out of control. I want to thank Robert for joining us today.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah, and Seth, I want to thank you for coming on and talking about your opinions as well.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Go
team.
Hi-Fi Rush.
Go Hi-Fi Rush, yes, go play that game. And that will be the final message of this podcast. Thank you all for watching, and stay safe out there.